Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today. It's a gray, overcast day, cold with a weak but sort of insinuating wind. Just a miserable day to be outside. Bad for dog walks, bad for any kind of errands. Just perfect for curling up and reading inside all day long. And I am currently reading a mammoth. March has begun. We are in March Mystery Madness. We're in mid-grade reading. We're in an Irish-a-thon. We're in March of the Mammoths, a BookTube event that celebrates enormous books that are 800 pages or more. And I'm in the midst of grappling with one of those books. I imagine I'll grapple it for a bit of time this month. But I'll be reading a lot of other mammoths this month, and I will be doing videos on them, so we'll be catching up. But the one that I'm grappling with was a hit in Italy. It's a big, fat historical novel about Mussolini that is turning out to be, I am delving into it now in depth. I flew through a chunk of it when I first got it, and now I am beginning to deal with it. A book this big that's obviously been percolating with its author this long is, I hope, going to have a whole lot of work in it that I'm going to need to unravel and understand. So I'm starting to grapple with it, and it is turning out to be, it's doing all kinds of things that I did not expect it to do, and that I don't know what I think about. I will figure it out. I will be grappling with that mammoth all through the month of March. But we've got mail today, despite the overcast, despite the miserableness outside. At least it's not freezing cold. I mean, there's a wind and there's no sunlight, so the melting of the ice and the snow that's everywhere is not happening as fast as I would like it to happen. But at least when you go outside, you're not thinking that you're going to die. So there's that. But neither one of us really wanted to be out at all. Frida doesn't really like getting colder and colder as the walk goes on, and I don't either. And ideally, what I like on our walks is for there to be no tension on the leash at all, the leash that leads to her, the little harness that grips her tiny little body. I like there to be no tension on that at all. I like it if we're just walking together and the leash is there in case something extraordinary happens, so that I have the ability to intervene. In other words, I let her pick where we're going to go and how long we're going to stick around where we are, and she didn't want to be out today any more than I did. But there's mail, and there are chewy treats for her. And there are no boxes in this pile, and I'm expecting that these will not all be from the same publisher like yesterday. Yesterday, I think, may have been a record on this channel. I don't think it's ever happened before that I've gotten only books from the same publisher in one mail haul, and all fiction. I think this will probably be going back to our usual variety here. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, my. Okay, well, my. The timing on this couldn't be any worse, now could it? This is the finished copy. I don't have a sheet in here, so I don't know when this comes out. But this is by Emma Fick, and it is Border Crossings, A Journey on the Trans-Siberia Railway. And it's a slightly bigger hardcover, and it's got all kinds of original illustrations throughout. So you do have journal entries that'll give you substantially more text, but this is mainly an illustrated novel, quite nicely, taking you on the whole of the journey. I wonder if you get a map here. Do you get a map? Yes. You get on the whole of the journey on the one possible route on the Trans-Siberia Railway. I've spent a lot of time on the Trans-Siberia Railway, but who can read a book like this with an unclouded mind right now? It's the same problem, actually, that Hannah at Hannah's Books is having over on her channel. She had been planning for a long time to do a slow and very fun read-along of War and Peace. And she had no way of knowing that Russia would suddenly become, in the course of a week, a pariah state in the world, that the very word would start to have a horrible connotation in ordinary, everyday conversation. She had no idea, in other words, that Russia would actually commit the insanity of invading Ukraine in the full eyes of the whole world, where in a connected world, where if your finances are connected with your nation, you're in big trouble. She had no way of knowing that. She made a video today. I'll try to remember to leave a link to it down below, where she basically throws the question open to you. What should she do? Does she dive into a War and Peace read along? Does she do so now? Does she delay? What are your thoughts on the subject of whether or not? I mean, in publicity statements, Vladimir Putin has said that War and Peace is one of his favorite books. Of course, he would say that, and I think Hannah's video boils down to whether or not we're going to let him have that. The question is it okay to do a War and Peace read along when Russia is currently making war on a neighbor and threatening nuclear war to the rest of the world? My own answer to that question would be indisputable. Yes, it is okay to do a read-along of a great Russian work. Putin is not Tolstoy. Putin has never read Tolstoy. Tolstoy had no idea, would not have agreed with Putin's wars of aggression. So, and a work stands on its own, right? Aside from the news or the history in which it sits. I don't know that I would probably do that read-along now, but you should go over to her channel and help her, talk with her about it. It's fascinating anyway. When you think about it, if you get a little clinical, it's fascinating anyway, as a question only. And now it's not an idle theoretical question. Now we are actually dealing with how do you separate the real world implications of the classics that you're reading from the classics themselves, and when do you do that, and to what extent? So this is going to be, I'll have to check the date on this. It's probably a March release, but it's going to be a little bit tricky to read. Those memories of mine are tricky to have. I have some wonderful memories of Moscow and Leningrad and St. Petersburg. I have some wonderful memories of those two places. And even those memories are difficult to navigate now. So a Russian book is going to be difficult to navigate. But once again, we are looking at whether or not a mail haul dictates a TBR that night. A chunk of my TBR tonight will be dedicated to that mammoth that I'm grappling with, and a chunk of my TBR will also be dedicated to March Mystery Madness, another March BookTube event. I intend to read at least one mystery every day. I've already got one done today. And also writing. I am writing The Apollo Twins. I'm writing a murder mystery in March. And that a chunk of that will have to get done, although I sat at the computer yesterday when all the work was done to sort of hatch out my narrative tone, the narrative tone that I want to take. How do I want to tell this? I know the story that I want to tell, the Apollo Twins, but how do I do it? That's the sort of the last decision that you come to. You have to get the nuts and bolts in place first, the planking and the foundation and whatnot, but then you have to decide how you want to tell the story. And I sat down to sort of make a few stabs here and there, see what method struck me the best, and an entirely different story just came bubbling up. An entirely different story that has nothing to do with March Mystery Madness. It isn't a mystery. Well, there are mysteries in it, but it isn't a mystery at all. It has only two characters, so it would fit with the theme of 2x2, but I don't know. I don't know how I'll deal with that. So what is this next one here? This comes out in August, at the end of August. It'll be almost September when we see this in bookstores. This is Two Cheers for Democracy. Two Cheers for Politics. Why Democracy is Flawed, Frightening, and Our Best Hope by Jedediah Purdy. Why do I know that name? Why do I know that name? Do you know? Jedediah Purdy is the William S. Benecke Professor at Columbia Law School. His work has appeared in The Atlantic, The New York Times, and The New Yorker, three venues that have never run my work, among other outlets, and he is on the editorial board of Dissent. He lives in New York. Okay, well, that doesn't help me, though. What else has he written? That's what your bio note is for. It's to tell me what else you've written. What else have you written? I know that I've read something by Jedediah Purdy. I know that I have. I feel like I want to say that it was fiction, not nonfiction. But anyway, this comes out in August. It's Two Cheers for Politics. This is, I'm sure, a conscious echo of E.M. Forster, Two Cheers for Democracy. So let's see what we have here. I don't have a sheet for it, but we have the back of the book, as you will have in bookstores. One of the country's most astute political thinkers explains how American political culture disempowers ordinary citizens and makes the case for a reinvigorated democracy. Americans across the political spectrum agree that our democracy is in crisis. We view our political opponents with disdain, if not terror. In Two Cheers for Politics, Jedediah Purdy argues that this heated political culture is a symptom of too much democracy, but of too little. Today, the decisions that affect us most are often made outside the political realm entirely, as market ideology, constitutional law, and cultural norms effectively remove broad swaths of collective life from the table of collective decision. The result is a weakened political system and an increasingly unequal polarized society. If we wish to renew that society, we'll need to claw back the ground that we've ceded to anti-politics. It's a wonderful term. And entrust one another with the power to shape our common life. Well, God bless him, but he's 10 years, 20 years too late. But this will certainly be interesting. I'm bothered here that I don't remember this author. I don't remember the specifics. Yesterday in a library tour, I had just a complete senior moment on a simple word of English vocabulary, the word uniform. I actually had to sound out the thing that soldiers wear, but I didn't know the word. It wouldn't come to the tip of my tongue, and it did. In a minute, it did. And one of you wrote and said, that a lot of other YouTube channels would certainly have edited that moment. And I, of course, don't know how to edit. I wouldn't have edited that anyway. But the person who left that comment also pointed out that they were sitting looking at the screen saying the word uniform. You can get it? Come on, uniform. And it reminded me of all the times that I've done that, watching videos. And probably a bookish version of that is going on right now. A bunch of you are probably saying who Jedediah Purdy is and how many times he's appeared on this channel. But I don't have to worry about 2 Cheers for Politics until late August, until the beginning of September, when politics will be on lots of people's minds. If Vladimir Putin does not plunge the world into thermonuclear war, if he unleashes a full barrage of nukes on Europe, on NATO countries, don't for a minute think, if you're in Australia or Indonesia or America, that you're not going to be affected by that. You are certainly going to be affected by that, even if it stays there. So, but if that happens and we get all the way to late August, politics will be on everybody's mind in the United States. Okay, this next one is one of these big white envelopes, and it's been badly mauled. Oh my God, look at that. It barely made. I'm very happy that it did make it to me. A lot of times I will get the package empty with a little, an obnoxious little note saying, "We care." we're sending you this empty package because we care. In this case, it was on its last legs, and some very conscientious postal worker taped it back together. So what was it that took so much trouble getting to me? A novel. Okay. This comes out in June. This is A Trail of Crab Tracks by Patrice Nganga. I have no idea. And, well, this. Is that Anangang? Anangam? I have no idea. I have no idea how to say that. Might even have inflections that I'm not comfortable doing. So what is this? The final novel in the author's magisterial trilogy exploring Cameroonian history in the 20th century. This is translated by Amy Barham Reed, and it's a powerful tale of a father and son and the fight for Cameroonian independence that can be read on its own as the culmination of the whole spectacular cycle. It's bothering me that I can't even guess how this name is pronounced. Nganang. Nganang? Something like that? Ganang is the word. If you take the N off, always, when you're having trouble with pronunciation, always take the part off that's giving you the trouble and pronounce the rest of it. And that usually will get you 2/3 of the way there. And if you take off the N here, then it's not hard to pronounce. But I'm probably wrong to pronounce, but not hard to pronounce. But anyway, let's see here. For the first time, Nithap flies across the world to visit his son Tanu in the United States. After countless staticky phone calls and transatlantic silences, he has agreed to leave Bangui in western Cameroon, the city where he has always lived, where he became a doctor, and despite himself, a rebel when he fell in love and where his children were born. When illness extends his stay, his son finds an opportunity to unravel the history of the mysterious man who raised him, following the trail of crab tracks to discover the truth of his father and his country. That's kind of nice. I don't know that I've read the other 2 volumes here. This is supposed to be the culminating volume. What were the other 2? Dog Days, Mount Pleasant, When the Plums Are Ripe. He teaches this. The author teaches comparative literature at Stony Brook University. Okay, well, this doesn't come out until June, so I don't have to think about it, but it sounds interesting. My only question is, that thing that's alluded to in the pub sheet, that you can read this thing on its own. I mean, we're told this is the culminating volume in a series of books. I always have a question there about whether or not the author has done the work to make it stand on its own. I shouldn't have to read the other two books, I don't think, but I'll give it a try. I'll look into it. Okay, what's this next one? Oh, you people who send things. See what happens? Fold this. Don't put this the whole length of the envelope. Someone's going to tear the envelope open. Whether it's me or an intern down in the mailroom, someone's going to rip it open, which is going to rip your paper. Fold it, and so that it's contiguous with the book, instead of sliding it neatly into the full length of the envelope, so that the only way that you can open this thing without partially destroying the pub sheet is if you gently slide an ivory-handled letter opener across the top and slide things out that way. No one does that. No one does that. They rip into these things because, like me, they've got a huge pile of stuff to get through. And that's what results when you do that. Fold these things. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, I hate that this is partially destroyed. All right, well, we've got a novel. This is by J.E. Tobin, and it is called When We Were Wolves. A minimalist but very effective cover. Let's see here. What is this? It's vaguely ringing a bell. 2 weeks ago, you suggested in an email that I send you a copy of my soon-to-be published novel. Okay, well, that would be why it's vaguely familiar, because I asked for it. This comes out on May 15th, so not as far away as a lot of the other books that we've seen today. We Were Wolves is a story of Tom Wingfield, who lives in a small Virginia town famous as the birthplace of U.S. presidents and Sonny Rollins, America's most celebrated college coach. Okay, the presidents don't get named? For 30 years, Tom has kept secret the truth about Rollins. But the news story sets off a chain of events that entraps Tom and his family in a media storm. Only a desperate act can save Tom and the life he has built. Okay. Michael Gurian, New York Times bestselling author of The Wonder of Boys and The Stone Boys. I've read both of those. They were both very good. Okay. He has a comment about this book. He says, to enter the world of J.E. Tobin's When We Were Wolves is to immerse ourselves in a vital David and Goliath story ripped from the headlines. Truth and courage are pitted against lies, lawyers, and hero worship. The writing is vivid and the plot relentless. This novel brims with empathy and insight and will stay with the reader long after the last page is read. And it may just change our perception of what makes someone a hero. Okay, I think it's pretty obvious what the secret here is, right? Since we're talking there was made mention of a coach, I think it's pretty obvious what the dark secret is here, and that's, well, if I'm right, if it's sexual abuse at school, that's pretty explosive. So what does James Tobin included a letter here? Very nice. Thanks for your consideration of my debut novel. Oh my. Fantastic. It's his debut novel. Wonderful. Okay. Well, it's this, I think, is probably a preliminary volume. You'll want patter on the back, I would assume. But how wonderful, that I often say on this channel that I don't really know why more self-published or indie published authors don't do this. Don't send me their book. Maybe they just don't know about my channel. Could that be? I don't know why a lot more of them don't do it, because even if I don't end up reviewing the book, hell, even if I don't end up liking the book, you're still getting it, previewed and held up and talked about in front of thousands of avid readers. A lot of you might be already pre-ordering this thing. It might interest you that much more than it interests me. But what is the other paper that got almost destroyed here? Oh, okay, the other paper is an actual sell sheet here. Yes, Tom Wingfield lives in a small Virginia town, famous, yeah, okay. And the author, J.E. Tobin, moved to New York City after college with a journalism degree and dreams of becoming a writer. That usually doesn't end well. After writing 2 off-Broadway plays for the Circle Repertory Company, indeed, and children's books for Macmillan, he watched from a rowboat as his first novel burned in a New Hampshire hotel fire. As a result, James's writing turned to textbooks and articles as he pursued a career as an educator and psychologist. Only when his son urged him to revisit his dream did he turn again to fiction. And When We Were Wolves is the result. What a great story. So this is going to come out as a $17 paperback in mid-May. And it's distributed by Ingram. So the Pale Horse Books is the name of the publisher. That could very well be J.E. Tobin, but it's distributed by Ingram, which means it will be available in your bookstore. Your Barnes & Noble, your Books A Million will be able to order this thing if it sounds of interest to you. Great. Okay, May 15th. I think that's still... I'm going to put these poor mangled papers away here. I think that's still too far ahead for me to actually dig into this. But you are not. You are not restricted by that. If you could pre-order this thing today, if it sounds interesting to you, fantastic! Wow. So that's a great origin story, right? The author watches his first novel burn from a rowboat, and it obviously daunted him at least a little. As who wouldn't it daunt, right? That he turns to other kinds of writing, and is only now coming back to write fiction. I wonder if this book bears any relation to the book that burned. Is this a second attempt at that book, or is it completely different? I wonder if that's true. Maybe this author would be interested in talking to me. Maybe a Zoom chat. You might find that interesting. We'll wait. We'll see. We'll get closer to May and see. I'll have his people talk to my people. My person's right there. So let's see what the next package is. We have a few more to go, and then we'll be done here. An indie novel, always very tempting, and a debut. How wonderful is that? So let's see what this next one is. Okay, this is from Grey Wolf. What is this? This is called Wonderlands by Charles Baxter. Another summer release. This comes out in July. This is Wonderlands, Essays on the Life of Literature by Charles Baxter. Now, Charles Baxter, I know. The author of 14 books. All right, are you going to tell me what they are? I know that I've read some of this guy's books. I know that I have. The Feast of Love, okay, is the famous one by him, and I read that. I don't think I reviewed it, but I read it. Harmony of the World, Through the Safety Net. Do any of you know this author? Let's see what we have here. So, in his new collection of essays, some of which were first given as craft talks at the Breadloaf Writers Conference, Charles Baxter shares years of wisdom on what makes fiction work. Baxter is equally at home tackling a thorny matter such as charisma, which intersects with political figures like the disastrous 45th U.S. president, as he is bringing new interest to subjects such as list-making in fiction, ranging from brilliant thinking on the nature of wonderlands in the fiction of Haruki Murakami and other fabulous writers, to more intimate reflections on Baxter's own life, including the story of a horrifying car crash and the introspective Letter to a Young Poet. This book is an insightful and lasting work of criticism. And Charles Baxter is the author of 14 books, and his stories have appeared in Best American Stories, Pushcart Prize Anthology, the O. Henry Prize Anthology, and this is almost certainly going to be, I mean, some of them are from, what was it again? My pretensions filter blurted out, but it was the Breadloaf, right? Yeah, it was Breadloaf Writers Conference. I will never speak at Breadloaf Writers Conference. To put it mildly. Aside, some of these things were craft talks at Breadloaf, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of the rest of the things in here were occasional pieces that he got, $200 for, somewhere in some periodical. But nevertheless, this is right up my alley. Good Lord. This is exactly the kind of thing that I not only like to read, but spend a chunk of everyday writing. But once again, this is outside of my reach. This is mid-July. Wonderlands by Charles Baxter. But, I blocked the bean. But it's outside of my reach. I have way too much. March is a huge month. March has turned out to be a huge month for books. So I have no possibility of reading a July book now, unless it's overwhelming me, unless it requires a huge amount of effort, like a certain historical novel monster, a mammoth that I'm reading. But let's go on to these last two and see what we have here. Neither one of them is big at all. These are both going to be manageable little titles. What is this first one? Okay, Are you also a summer release? Well, May. Comes out on the 10th of May. This is The Adventures of Herbie Cohen, World's Greatest Negotiator by Rich Cohen. When a book as much fun and sui generis as this one comes along, it can be tempting to reach for comparisons, to describe it as, say, a business biography as imagined by Larry David, an oddball family portrait worthy of Roz Chast, and improbably wed to the soulful but unsentimental wisdom of Oliver Burkeman. But as Rich Cohen's fans know from his funny and incisive books and magazine writing, the greatest pleasure of his stories is always the originality of their telling, their irreducible Rich Cohen-ness. Here, Rich may have found his ultimate subject in his own father, Herbie. Herbie Cohen is best known as the author of You Can Negotiate Anything, a business how-to that came out of nowhere to become a publishing phenomenon in the 1980s. I sold many copies of that book. It remains influential and is still to this day in print. For decades he was, as Rich writes, a guru of the corporate retreat, the wise man helicoptered in to settle the strike. Carter summoned Herbie, that's President Carter to you, Carter summoned Herbie during the Iran hostage negotiations, as did Reagan during his Gorbachev summons. He once resolved an MLB umpire strike. MLB, is that hockey? And a New Orleans police strike in the same calendar year. He likely coined the term win-win. And though he's worked with countless Fortune 500 companies, he maintains he's learned everything he ever needed to know about negotiation as a kid growing up in the then gritty neighborhood of Bensonhurst. Bensonhurst! Okay, so this is a weird, antic biography / profile of his father, of Rich Cohen's father. Do I know Rich Cohen? I suppose you're not going to tell me anything about him. Let me see here. New York Times bestselling author of Tough Jews, Monsters, Sweet and Low, The Fish That Ate the Whale, The Sun and the Moon, The Rolling Stones, The Chicago Cubs, The Last Pirate of New York, and Pee-wee's. Okay. I actually think I read The Last Pirate of New York. Okay, great. Well, this comes out in May, so we're creeping a little bit closer to a time frame when I can read these things. But so far, a little bit alarmingly, the only one that fits is the Trans-Siberian Railway. That's not going to be much of a read. Let's see what this last one is. See if this also is extremely advanced. Oh no, this is 2 volumes, very skinny volumes, perhaps slim volumes of poetry. Oh no. Are these really slim volumes of poetry? They are. Oh my God. Okay. These are slim volumes of poetry. I always make a butt of a joke of that, but this is actually the case. The first one is in early April. It is called Kane Named the Animal, and it is by Shane McCrae. Skinny little thing like that. Comes out in May. Or did I say May? Yes. April. Comes out in April. Comes out in early April. I don't know if we dare to read one of these poems. I don't think that it's a little too overcast for that. Let's read about them a little. Although reading pub sheet patter on contemporary poetry is excruciating. I feel so sorry for the people who have to write these things. How do you do it? Shane McCrae fashions a world of endings and infinites in Kane Named the Animal. See what I mean? What on earth does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. With cyclical rhythmic lines, well, yeah, it's poetry. I kind of hope that create and recreate images of our shared and specific past. He writes into and through the wounds that we remember and strains toward a vision of joy. Okay, right, that doesn't help at all. Shall we try one of the poems just to see? Let's try one of the poems. Let's try the first poem, which is called Some Heavens Are All Silence. Listen to my breath, you'll hear each breath I've drawn. Since my voice changed and the sound got deeper, bow your head, pull down a shroud from the heaven white folks get peace, privacy from, pull down one down to cover us. I know you got a ladder or a string, a ladder in your pocket, straight and tall, a white string made of white strings, twisted tight together, and it hangs above your head. You pull, and a ladder rolls down from that heaven. White folks pull grave by grave to earth. I know y'all got a heaven just for y'all and a God who don't speak or don't make y'all listen. Listen, bow your head. That is the voice of God, that breath. Okay. All right. This is going to be uphill. Not only is that awful, but and certainly not rhythmic or metrical in any way whatsoever. It's just however the author felt like putting it on the page. But look what it does. Look what it does. It assumes that all white people are racist. It assumes that the God of all white people is racist. It assumes that it assumes that you have to agree with that in order to even understand the poem. So, but it's addressed to white people. So it's not like as a white-skinned, all this emphasis on identity politics, on skin color. It's not like as a white reader I can simply say, all right, well, I can just ignore this. It's addressed to me. Okay, well, I don't know if maybe we caught. I mean, that was the first poem in the volume, and I don't want to do this poorly. I will give it much more attention later on in the year. Let's go to a different one though, just in case. The Lost Tribe of Eden. I just picked at random here. They knew they'd disappear. They knew. Okay, no punctuation. They knew they'd disappear. They knew the stars. That is all one sentence with no punctuation whatsoever. That is incorrect. No, that is simply incorrect. Punctuation is there for a reason. It tells me what the sentence is actually going to say. It's not like punctuation is a creation of white imperialism. It's necessary for the language. I have no idea what that line means because there's no punctuation in it. Oh God, there's no punctuation anywhere in this thing, even a final period at the end of it all. Okay, well, let's give it a try anyway. They knew they'd disappear. They knew the stars and sun shone for the naked pair. They knew not to complain. They knew they couldn't choose the prayer God finally would answer to. Then there's a break to another, I guess, paragraph. There's no punctuation here. So what if it was no prayer? They knew the fields outside the garden were alive and growing. They knew to fear. They knew God hadn't said enough about the tree. They knew the use of knowing. Okay, that seems to be implying the Genesis myth in the Bible. The garden, a mention of trees, including a tree connected with knowledge. It seems like that might be alluding to the first few verses of the book of Genesis. They knew the angels knew the will of God. They knew the angels whispered late at night. Well, that's good. I'm assuming that I'm reading it right. There's no punctuation, so I don't know. But that's good. They knew the angels whispered at night. That late at night. That's good. They knew the fruit. They knew the apple. Wept in their mouths when bitten, like a good smell on the serpent's tongue. Him they knew best. On his long legs he stood as tall as people. Okay, well, Shane McCrae and I might not get along, but I will read everything in the book. And then we have a second slim volume of poetry here. This is also coming out in early April. These have the same release date. Oh, and okay, this is by someone, Angie Malenko, and it's actually called Venice. I'm sure it won't have anything to do with Venice, but I love the city of Venice. So let's see what we have here. Angie Malenko alchemizes art and life into a dazzling collection of poetry. See what I mean? The publicity pattern for these things, it's such a losing battle, because how are you supposed to say anything about it, right? The publicity pattern that we read for Kane named the animal, for instance, we only read a couple of lines of it, but those lines don't mention race. It's obvious that the book is going to be suffused with race issues. Let's see. In this book, the author dissolves the boundary between the sublime and the ordinary. Okay. All right. The mythic and the rational, the past and the present. She sees a Roman tablet scratched with Greek script in the waxen wings of a bouffant bee, and she thinks of the abyss between two airport terminals when considering Rodin's The Gates of Hell. From Naples, Italy, to its sister city on the Gulf of Mexico, or at home in the glow of a computer screen, Malenko probes the etymologies and eccentricities of all she encounters. Okay, well, we've waited for penny in for a pound. Let's read the first poem here. Let's see. Is it very long? No, it's not very long. It's all in italics. And And it does have punctuation. It is almost the new year, almost a new decade, and good riddance to the old one. We go on a whim to a Mycenaean pit that made compost out of a king, his funerary conveyance, and the living horses that drew him. But, Famagusta, can you say by what ghost we are detained at the place where the Venetians witnessed the Ottomans flay their commander? It has rained, clover makes handsome reparations, and butterflies called painted ladies are visiting their yellow cups on stalks, one by one. Fennel sends up plumes. My kids fill their lungs, stretch their bodies, roll in long grass amid half-hidden rocks, while I wander the dank castle rooms, surfacing on a rampart where the sea is militantly blue, the sun a medallion. A whitecap's surrendering tower, a glitter as of weaponry, rehearse their capacities to stun. Every wave has a will to power. Okay. Well, that was all in italics, so that was pretty good. But that might not be the first poem. No, it's not the first poem. All right, let's zap ahead. We did it for Shane McCrae. We can do it here. Let's do a poem called "Death in Venice." In Miami, Ave Marias are pending. A prayer, a charm, a petition, a mother-to-daughter transmission. Blessed be the fruit of thy womb. Female, okay, that wasn't mother-to-daughter. Right? Okay, but anyway. Female mosquitoes are sending a virus through uterus and skull, reviving the old rhyme with tomb, rendering baby's brain pan null. My first thought is selfish. Thank God I'm past all that. The worries, the growing fat, on no chateauneuf de pape, on no raw brie or shellfish, the lost pyramids of fruits de mer. With pleasure, we served ourselves up to be denied or given a scare. Rain scratches across my vision, utter loss of indemnity, opens cisterns breeding calamity. Then I think of something worse, the sun bleaching all petition, all condolence, the papier bible rustle of leaves without verse, of bark without epistle. Okay, well that was not as good, and rain can't scratch things, but well, okay, all right. So that is it. that is it was all over the place, as mail halls always are here. Sorry about the length of the video. So we've got 2 slim volumes of poetry: Venice and Kane Named the Animal. We've got The Adventures of Herbie Cohen. We have Wonderlands by Charles Baxter, Meditations on Literature and the Writing Life. We have When We Were Wolves, which is J.E. Tobin's debut novel, soon to come out. We have A Trail of Crab Tracks, about Cameroonian independence, a novel series about Cameroonian independence. We have 2 Cheers for Democracy by Jedediah Purdy, who's getting a Google search as soon as I turn off the camera. And finally, we have Border Crossings, a beautifully illustrated, big graphic novel about the Trans-Siberia Railway and what its experiences are like. So a very varied mail haul, a lot of psychobabble for you. Thank you for going through it with me. I'm going to wrap this up for now. This has gone on way too long, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.